Good morning again to you from my church setting. Those of you that tuned in yesterday will know that I'm doing a two-part, well, it's turned out to be a two-part series. In fact, it will really be three parts. Today I'm finishing off with what I did yesterday. We were looking at the 11 isms that the world lives under, the rules of the enemy, you might say, the way that he works upon the minds of men. And I think the best thing for me to do is to just quickly recap over what I did yesterday. Firstly, I read the scripture concerning the false prophet and the coming of the false prophet, and I said that he's very much of an underrated person, a bit like the vice president of any country. We don't tend to take a lot of notice of the vice president, but we forget that very often they actually wield a lot of power. Those of you that are in American politics will know that from Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was George Bush's vice president and very much of an influence behind the Iraq war and all that took place at that time at the end of the 1990s. And these people, the Joseph Goebbels to Adolf Hitler, these are the people that very often they speak into the ears of the leaders. And although they don't have the power, they exercise the power. And just to quickly recap there with Revelation 13, just the first three verses, I'll just read those as a recap. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. The power of Satan there. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. You see, the false prophet always pointing to the first beast. And he doeth great wisdom, so he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. So in the sight of men and in the sight of the beast, as we said yesterday. Saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound of the sword and did live. And as I said yesterday, we spoke about the 11 isms, and we took 5 of those isms, and they were rationalism, intellectualism, environmentalism, safetyism, and scientism. And I won't go into explaining that again here because I would really just recommend that you flip onto yesterday's teaching to catch what I was saying about that. But I don't want to take up further time by recapping too much on them. Rationalism, of course, being the basis of reason and the removal, really, of the supernatural. And always based on ideologies and ideas. Intellectualism, the power of the mind to analyze and to put reality, again, devoid of emotion. And we spoke about the dead spirit of intellectualism. Environmentalism, the idea of the false concept of protecting the earth against something that is considered harmful. And of course, we know that carbon is the new enemy, isn't it, of the environmentalists, and how they are manipulating governments and all sorts of other think tanks and organs to propagate their agenda of zero carbon. And we looked at safetyism yesterday, the idea of designated safe spaces. People need to be protected from certain speech. And so now, of course, we're under the power of censorship constantly being thrown at us. And they want to really protect their lies. And so they want to shut out the truth. And they call it safety. Safety from your ideas. Safety from your opinions. And then we also looked at scientism. That was number 5 of the isms out of 11. Scientism. The idea behind evolution. And the idea that there is no narrative that speaks about a creation that comes from the Bible. And therefore we must only follow the science that we are determined to follow by our masters. And of course we know all about that with regard to to this, and how we're told that we have to follow the science and follow my leader. And of course, we don't often realize, do we? People in the world don't often realize that those leaders are leading them down pathways that are going to lead them to destruction. And so we have 5 isms. I said there were 11, so I've got 4 more to give you. I really can't count, can I? It's actually 6 more. I've got 6 more to give you. And I'm going to begin with this one. Governmentalism. Governmentalism. What do I mean by that? Well, the expansion of the state's rule. We all know, of course, if you've ever read the book Animal Farm, you will see how the poor animals, well, they'll say the poor animals, they're in the book, of course, they're regarded as being oppressed on the farm, aren't they? And then I think it's Napoleon as the main pig, and I think it's Snowball. I remember reading this at school, and how eventually the animals turn the farm on its head, and they become the rulers, don't they? And of course, it's a skit on communism. And the whole idea that power belongs in the hands of the elite, in the hands of the state. And of course, we're very much seeing that now, aren't we? We're in a situation where the state is dictating to the lives of men and women, telling you how to bring up your children, telling you what must go into the minds of your children, telling you what must go into the bodies of your children. Of course, those of you that live in Australia will know the mandates and how children have been taken from families and in many respects just given this thing without any consent from the parent. The parent's opinion doesn't matter. So governmentalism expands the power of the state in every area until we become state dependent. Those of you that might have heard of the term universal basic income, all this is stemming out of governmentalism. And at the back of it, of course, is the other thing, which is known as global governance. Global governance, the idea that the whole world can come under one system. And of course, we're beginning to see that developing, aren't we? The power of the state. And it doesn't just go into the way we live, it gets into the way we think, the ideas behind the way we think. And it's becoming really, really serious because people are not thinking for themselves anymore. They're beginning to say, well, the government knows best. I had this actually told to me, or I spoke to somebody once who actually said that to me, that I put my trust in Boris Johnson. And I began to think, well, if you're putting your trust in men, you're really going down a sorry path, because men, all men, unfortunately, don't have the Spirit of God. And therefore they won't be able to lead you in the right pathway. They'll be able to only lead you in pathways that in the end pander to their own ambitions, if I can put it like that. They're pandering to their own ambitions. We see this all the time in politics. How many times haven't governments promised in their manifestos that they're going to do this for us, they're going to do that for us, it's going to be great. And when it comes to it, of course, they don't actually keep those promises. But nevertheless, we are deceived into thinking that the state is the thing that runs our lives. No consent comes from the people. And that's when we see the destruction of democracy. And we're, of course, beginning to see that across the Western world now. I spoke about the truckers and the way that these mandates are being imposed heartlessly. And this is the power of the state working. And of course, then they'll have the media at their side, don't they, to twist everything, make it look as though that what they're saying is what is the majority opinion. And of course, the media know how to pump that out. So, governmentalism. A lot of these overlap. So if I do mention the same sorts of things, it's because basically the enemy's got one strategy. And he often couches it in different words. And another one here is, you might not have heard of, stakeholder capitalism. Well, we all know what capitalism is, don't we? Of course, the idea, concept of free enterprise, being able to work in the market in a situation where we have what's known as a meritocracy. That's the real purpose of capitalism, is that those that can work for themselves, those that can use their own initiative and gain advantages in business. And the concept of capitalism, of course, goes back centuries. It's the concept of markets and the way that markets run and the way that people can earn individual livings. But the World Economic Forum, I don't know whether they're going to ban me for saying the World Economic Forum, but Klaus Schwab, again, the leader of the World Economic Forum. And I just want to say to you, if you haven't researched the World Economic Forum, please go on their website and read what their stated intentions are. And one of them is stakeholder capitalism. And it's the idea that everybody's involved. This is the lie. Everybody's involved in creating a new world. And the concept of ownership starts to disappear. And here, of course, we start to see the overlaps with the communist system, the idea of being dependent on the state. Stakeholder capitalism. It says this: you will own nothing and be happy. That is Klaus Schwab's intention. He doesn't really want you to be owning anything. But the lie that they don't tell you is that the elites, just that little small cabal of people, they're the ones that are going to be the owners, the controllers, the ones that actually control the markets. And as we've seen in the last 2 years, the wanton destruction, the deliberate and willful destruction of small business. And that has been at the heart of what they've been trying to create at the World Economic Forum. By destroying small business and enterprise, you get rid of that meritocracy. You get rid of the concept of people being able to work for themselves. And then the idea is that we're all part of a greater good. It's what's known as utilitarianism. And this greater good will be a wealth distribution process. And it will help the third world to improve and all that kind of thing. But you will own nothing and be happy. You'll be living in a smart city. You'll have all the tools and gadgets that you possibly need. And you'll have the state thinking for you. And you'll have men like Klaus Schwab, who basically have been at the bottom of training up the present world leadership that we have. He actually boasts about it in one of his videos. He says that Justin Trudeau, even Vladimir Putin, Emmanuel Macron, he claims that these people all went through what he calls his young people's training school for global governance. And he openly boasts about it. There's no hiding this anymore. They're open about what they want to do, about their plans. But they don't really want to include you as a stakeholder. This is an elite cabal, and they've got their own plans. Now, I have to be fairly creative about the words that I use on this channel. Another brother of mine who happened to just drop a couple of names in a certain context found that his channel has been banned for a while. And it started off with a couple of his videos literally being muted in the middle and a great big word censored coming across, which of course is all part of what I'm talking about now. And so I will be creative, especially with the final ism that I discuss, because I know how easily these channels can be found by the algorithm, especially if there's a substantial number of subscribers, as there are on this one, by the grace of God. So, we've had ism number 6. Now we're going to have ism. We've had ism number 7. So let's have ism number 8. And that is new communism. I call it new communism because, again, it ties up with stakeholder capitalism. And again, it's trusting the state, but this time it's all about information. What do the communists do? What is the way that they operate in order to get their people to comply? And it's the one word, isn't it, that we all know, propaganda. And propaganda works in a certain way. It doesn't want you to understand what is really happening. And so they present two things to you: misinformation and disinformation. Now, sometimes it's difficult to actually discern the difference between the two. But the communist states have always operated like that. If you look at the way the Soviet Union has operated, their newspaper that used to be called Pravda was just basically lies from start to finish. But as people would read the newspapers, as they do today in the media, people will pick up a headline and they will say, yes, that's absolutely the truth. I follow that newspaper, maybe because it has a liberal bent or it has a conservative bent. But what's happening, of course, at the moment really is that these papers are really just following the line that they're told to follow. And so in new communism, the state provides everything for you. It fills your mind with their propaganda, and it also upholds you financially. I think I might have mentioned earlier the concept of universal basic income. The state will provide your finances. Those of you that maybe are not fortunate enough to be in a highly skilled job and that have found yourself out of work in the last couple of years and sustained by the state. And have you noticed that the state has got endless resources? They can provide and provide and provide. They can just print the money off and they can keep everything tuned up and going. Of course, there's a bill to pay at the end, but that's not what they're telling you. And so people that are on the side of this new communism, as I call it, are operating inside the system that thinks that they're being protected, and that the state seems to have endless resources. And their propaganda machine, of course, will keep churning out what they want you to hear all the time. Those of you that have ever been to a communist state will know what I'm talking about. I had the unfortunate or fortunate experience of going behind the Iron Curtain. It was only for a day, actually. It was East Berlin. And I was so struck by the difference between the people in the eastern sector of Berlin compared to the western sector. I remember there were no billboards, there were no advertised restaurants. Wherever you walked, there were police called the Stasi in green uniforms, and they walked around in pairs. And the women seemed to have very drab clothes, and they seemed to wear no makeup. And they all seemed to have a stony-faced expression on their face. And it was bland. That's what I want to say. Life was bland. Life had no color because the people had no initiative to think for themselves. And this is happening today. They want to get you to a place where you believe everything the government says, you trust the science, you trust their ideas, and you just roll along with it. And of course, there's no place for religion in their ideas. There's no place for the truth. And in the new communism, it's slightly different. There's a merger. There's a merger going on between one particular religion and another, a tolerance level that goes beyond tolerance to the point now where we're starting to say, well, we can maybe start to throw aside some of these shackles. I think particularly here of the Church of England and the way that our monarchy seems to embrace the concepts of Catholicism, when there was a time in this country where we fought civil wars to keep Protestantism and Catholicism apart. But now there's a merger, there's a friendship that's going on. And I believe that once we do get eventually get the new king, Charles, as he will be, Charles III, I believe then we will have that new communism in place. He's already said that he is defender of faiths. Those of you that live in the United Kingdom will know that the Queen is the defender of the faith. But he wants to be defender of faiths. And everything will be brought together. And so our minds are being cultivated to think in that way. Going on to truthism, number 9, truthism number 9. And it's actually, I said truthism, I actually said what it was, didn't I? I say ism number 9, should I say. I've got them all in front of me here, so I'm having to be careful because I have a lot of notes in front of me here. And it's this, post-truthism. Post-truthism. Now you might think that's a very strange phrase. And just to put it into context for you, when Donald Trump, I hope that's not a name that gets me banned, when the previous president of the United States was coming to power, and he had a little bit of an alliance with our Nigel Farage in the UK here. And of course, those of you will know what our Brexit was all about, our exit from the European Union. Nigel Farage was the spearhead that actually brought that about. People, of course, credit it to Boris Johnson, but it was really Nigel Farage's baby, his dream baby. For something like 25 years, he wanted to get Britain out of the European Union. And there was very much of an alliance with Donald Trump. And of course, those of you know that once Trump started to candidate for the presidency, powers rose up, didn't they? Powers that said, no, we can't have this man in power. And they began a campaign against him, a campaign of disinformation and misinformation. But the concept behind it was that he was leading a populist movement, and it was filled with emotion. It had no objective truth in it whatsoever. And Trump was accused of that. He was accused of denying objective truth and riding along a wave of populism and emotion. And post-truthism does that. It takes out the element of truth, and it actually stamps a lie on top of the truth and says, no, what you're saying is really just a lot of hype. You're just drawing people to yourself without any kind of substance to what you're actually offering to people. Those of you that have been to Trump's rallies will know that. If I'm talking to you in the United States, it was very much an experience. It was very much a movement. And those that were outside of that movement and were actually railing against it were saying, no, we can't have that. Ours is the only way to follow. You must follow the line of the state that has been perpetrated now for many, many decades. And this man is coming along with ideas that are basically to do with things like God and country, nationalism and borders. We can't have that. And so they began to stamp his ideas. They began to stamp the ideas of freedom away, push them away, push the ideas of freedom away. And their objectivity was the only thing that mattered. And of course, anything that relates to God or connects to God is denied as being truth. And so we live in also what's known as this post-truth era, isn't it? And it seems to come at us now from many sides. And we can see that people have their own facts. And there was I think it was President Trump's aide, I'm not sure if it was her, she actually used the phrase alternative facts. And this has now been taken on board very much by the liberal establishment. Alternative facts. So your set of facts are not my set of facts. That means we're living in an era where truth is relative. But those of us who actually follow and walk with the Lord Jesus Christ know that isn't the case. We know that we follow a Bible, a word of God that contains truth. Truth is either this or it's that. There's no grey areas in between. So that's the concept of post-truthism. Moving on, number 10. And this actually, I've got three words here actually that begin with T, but to fit it into the ism that I'm talking about. Now, those of you may want to come up with all sorts of other isms. I don't know, but I'm thinking here particularly of again the stated goal of Klaus Schwab. He actually drops this into many of his speeches. The idea of transhumanism. Transhumanism. I speak about this in my brochure, The Biggest Lie of All. Those of you that have seen my previous videos know that I talk about this. And transhumanism, of course, connected to the technocracy and what you might call technocentrism that is now pervading our society. We're now from Silicon Valley, the development of the computer, the concept that the internet is becoming now, of course, all pervasive, isn't it? Everywhere. And those of you that might have seen it, I don't know, there's actually a kind of a meme, where it shows the development of the ape, from the Neanderthals upwards, and you see the ape stretching more and more upright until he's human. Then you see the one that actually has the mobile phone in their hands, walking along. Of course, we see that everywhere. We all do it, don't we? But then the final stage, the transhuman stage, that smartphone isn't needed anymore, that it's all in here. This has all been downloaded to the cloud, downloaded to that great brain of computerization, completed, that man and computer then become one, the singularity. And the mixing of iron and clay, as the scripture speaks about in Daniel. I won't go into that now, it's a larger subject, but this is how Satan makes gods in his image. We're not going to be made in the image of God if we're following transhumanism. We're going to be made into Satan's image. The mixture of iron and clay, this is what they want, the ultimate connection between the two. And imagine having your brain downloaded to some internet server or internet memory bank or whatever it's called, so that you are then the fount of all knowledge. And of course, this was seen back in Genesis, wasn't it? We can't let man build that tower, and we can't let them get to that stage, because what does Scripture say in Genesis? There'll be nothing impossible for them to not achieve. And of course, this is the stated goal of the World Economic Forum. It's the stated goal of many billionaires. There are many thoughts about Mr. Musk, if we can put him like that. I don't think I'm going to get banned for mentioning his name. But the Transhuman Agenda, the idea of merging biology and technology. And of course, the technocrats, this is what they're planning in their smart cities and their smart workplaces. And of course, everything becomes smart, doesn't it? The Internet of Things. Of course, I keep getting nagged by my water company to get a smart meter. Everything tracked, everything traced, everything monitored, everything presented to this new God, the God of the cloud. Not the God that's coming in the clouds, but the God of the cloud. And this attempt is going to be basically an attempt to merge man and machine. And of course, referring back again to this, another technocratic invention, biology mixed with technology. And we know that there's another result to that. And of course, that's for another video, for another time. The Transhuman Agenda, the bionic man. Of course, we've seen it in the films, haven't we? I've spoken about this before. Mr. Schwarzenegger and his bionic powers. And I think I saw something yesterday, actually. It was quite interesting. I don't know if any of you saw. They've created a sixth finger. Now, this is a machine that attaches. It's rather like an extra thumb at the back here. And it showed people actually manipulating with this thing. And it was like an additional finger to help you do maybe two things with one hand at the same time. Always new inventions, always new ideas. Well, I could have actually finished on that one, and I actually thought about this when I was preparing this. Now that the one that I want to end with was possibly one that I could have included earlier, but it's an important thing, because this one digs deep down into history and into emotion, and it's this, and it's the final ism that I've got here: anti-racism. Anti-racism. And it's the concept of fighting up against what the world tells you is a racist concept. Now, I don't want to use certain terminologies here, because I again have to be careful of the algorithm. So I won't refer to color so much, okay? I'll just point to this W, okay? W, skin, all right? If you know what I'm talking about. And the idea of supremacy, which of course is a false concept. And I've spoken before about wokeness, my whole idea of social justice, and the way that these lies are being spilt out. The idea that if you have a certain colour skin, then you're a hater of people that have a different colour skin. And anti-racism, the anti-racism movement, of course, with the BLM concept, the Black Lives Matter. And we've seen, of course, the wanton destruction of cities and the powers behind it. But of course, the powers behind these organizations are lying to you all the time. The person that controls or is at the head of that particular organization claims to be a Marxist, is in fact probably one of the supreme capitalists, owning several homes all over the place. The dissemination of hate, the idea that, in a false concept, that people of this colour have only been haters of people of other colour. An absolute lie. God certainly has used us, those of us with this colour skin, because if you think back to the missionaries that have taken the gospel to the world, men like Hudson Taylor, Gladys Aylward, great intercessors like Rees Howells, many, many other missionaries, men that have started up charities. Think of Bernardo, men that have been philanthropists like Lord Shaftesbury in the removal of slavery from the world. And very often people who have this colour skin are accused of, you're the slave merchants, you know. But they forget that the biggest slave merchants on the earth were not us, but the Arabs. And so very often, truth, of course, again twisted to the idea that if you have a certain colour skin, then you're a hater of other races, that you are supreme, which is a nonsense and a lie. And of course, it's disseminated into politics, it's disseminated everywhere. And now, of course, the woke movement is now spreading this concept. And the idea that we should be ashamed to be a certain colour, that we should make apologies for our history. Meanwhile, yes, man's history is mixed. Yes, and there has been slavery. But we've also seen the development of civilization. We've seen the development of many inventions that have come in the world through men like Einstein, through men like Edison, ladies like Marie Curie. We can't deny those things. But God has made us all equal. That is the truth. So I hope you didn't switch off in the middle of the message and think, well, that's his, he seems to be thinking along that certain track. But no, no, no. God created us all equal before him. And all of us have that, and should have that fighting chance. And as I've mentioned before in a previous video, that God has another plan for us. And that's the plan of making us new, giving us a new body and a new identity, so that all these particular things will no longer be relevant. So I'm gonna finish off with just saying here that this merger of idea, this merger of thought is all preparing itself for the coming of those two men, the false prophet and the Antichrist. And wherever there's a truth, there's a lie. Wherever there's something real, there's something counterfeit. And the two are drawing very close together now. And it's going to be more and more difficult to discern between the two. But there is a preparation. And that preparation is taking place now. The spirit of Antichrist is in the world. As it says in John, there have been many Antichrists. And there have been many false prophets. But we're beginning to see now that we're coming to a stage where that trinity of evil is going to rise its head. That's the beast, the Antichrist, the second beast, the false prophet, all powered by the dragon, Satan. Now, tomorrow I'm going to be looking at some scriptures. I haven't mentioned many scriptures today because I wanted to get this concept across, but I'll be looking at the way Satan twists scriptures based around this, but we'll conclude with this. And I'm sure that you can think up some other isms, but these 11, I believe, are pervading the world, and they've been shaping our world, especially over the last 2 years. And I just pray that we can all be alert to what's going on, because things are changing so rapidly, so quickly. And we need that discernment from the Lord more than ever. We need to walk closely with him. I pray you'll have a blessed day.